Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and welcome to week 7 of the Language Learning Mastermind group. I'm excited to talk about language learning today and, of course, talk about some of my own progress. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So, I wanted to start off and talk about my Russian progress for the week, and it went okay. I would definitely say that this was actually one of my weaker weeks with Russian. My head was really not into language learning that much this week. There was a lot going on, and I was very distracted. And language learning just didn't really have my entire focus. Now, that being said, I'm almost at my hour target for the week. I'm 15 minutes short. So I'll make that up at some point today. But I think that the kind of the main point with this is that sometimes language learning just doesn't go your way, for a day or a week or what have you, and you just kind of have to accept that. There's going to be periods of time when you're just not motivated, you're not feeling it. You didn't have the best study session, you just weren't focused and concentrated, and that was kind of the case for me this week. Now that being said, it wasn't all bad, right? I got pretty much 7 hours of language learning in this week, which is great, right? That is definitely time with the language. That's exposure. That is learning the language. And I am better at vocabulary. I did do listening and grammar, and so I am better at these things. But it's just I think that I could have done better. I could have done better in terms of just putting a little bit more time into the language, having a little bit more focus when I was doing that Russian study. But that's okay, right? We move on and we continue on to the next week. So overall, Russian was okay this week. It just wasn't the best for me, right? I know that there was some good in there, but I know I can do better. And I think that just identifying what went right and what went wrong is very important in language learning. And I realized that there was some mistakes that were made, and I'm just moving forward to have a better week with language learning, just going forward. Now, tackling each of the areas. So with vocabulary, vocabulary was good this week. That's predominantly where I focused my efforts and time. And on a positive note, I have noticed that some of the words that I was struggling with maybe a week or two ago, I do know them better. And at the time, it just seemed like I was really struggling to acquire or just remember some of those words that I was learning. And it's interesting, right? With enough time and exposure, eventually you get to a place where you remember the word or you're more comfortable with the word. And I noticed that this week with a couple of words that I have been learning. So I think that an important kind of just observation with this or just lesson here is that, even with those really tough words or those words that you just think you're never going to learn, they just don't seem to stick. Eventually, with enough time and exposure, you'll get them down. And I think that I noticed that quite clearly this week. Which was, definitely a plus, right? And I think that just gives me reassurance, and I think it's just a reassurance in general that just keep at it, keep with the time and exposure with the language, and you're going to eventually pick up the vocabulary along the way. So overall, vocabulary was pretty good. Like I said, I think that I could have been way more focused this week, but that being said, I am making progress. On the words that I'm learning, which is really positive, and that includes some of the more difficult words that I've been struggling with, a couple of weeks ago. So on to grammar. Grammar, I don't really have much of an update on this front. I did do a little bit of grammar this week, but it really wasn't a main focus. But I did do some listening, and listening was also good. Like I said from the prior week, listening for the most part is a wall of sound, but I am recognizing words here and there. And I did notice that again this week, which was really positive. So, I'm continuing to make progress on listening, even though it's only so much time. But listening is going to keep ramping up as I get better at the language, especially as I kind of incorporate it into just daily tasks, right? Into multitasking items, as I go about my day. But listening is going well. I've been listening to Russian news, and occasionally I'll just kind of physically watch the news too. And there's a bunch of text on the screen sometimes, and I'm also noticing a lot of words that I've learned in the kind of text of the Russian news. So that's kind of really awesome. So basically, from a listening perspective, it's going really well. I'm noticing words. like I said, from a text perspective, but also just hearing them in the program itself. So that's really positive. I'm really kind of happy about how it's progressing so far, even though, like I said, most of it is a wall of sound, but overall, listening is going pretty well, and I'm very happy with it. So, for this topic this week, I actually wanted to talk about just kind of plateauing or just the sense that maybe you didn't make a lot of progress over the last week or the last month, or it just doesn't seem like you're improving. So, it's kind of similar to what I mentioned earlier, which was, I was really distracted this week. I don't feel like I'm in a plateau, but I was kind of distracted, and I just wanted to kind of expand on this topic and kind of all these areas, right? Whether it's, we're talking about a plateau, just you weren't motivated or what have you. And I think that the first thing to just kind of be aware of is that everyone goes through these struggles, right? Everyone goes through periods where they're not motivated, they're distracted, they feel like they're not making progress, etc. And especially with language learning, a lot of times I think that people, they're doing language learning by themselves. They're not doing it with other people, right? So they're learning a language, and for the most part, maybe their friends aren't learning any languages. Or the people they know they're not learning languages, they're not really part of a language learning group or anything like that, and so really their main progress is just kind of isolated to their own experience. And I think that when you're kind of isolated, it's really easy to kind of just fall into those very negative thoughts and get into a comparison where you just think you're bad at language learning, you're not progressing quick enough compared to other people, and I think that it's just important to realize that everyone kind of goes through this. And especially with YouTube, you might see kind of the progress update videos like from polyglots. And, in some instances, people will show their, kind of their negative periods, right? Or they're struggling with the language process. Maybe it's, selectively choosing mistakes or kind of selectively choosing these kind of down periods. But the reality is that like everyone is facing these difficulties, right? And it's really true with just about everything in life, right? Especially with just kind of the modern era and social media, there seems to be a heavy focus on appearance, on a perception of things, right? Where if you're on social media, most of it is positive, right? Or hey, look at this awesome accomplishment, look at my victories. Look at how much fun I'm having, etc. And a lot of times the negativity isn't really shown, or the negativity is just kind of deep down there, the failure or whatever it is. And especially when we're just kind of inundated with the social media kind of culture, where you really are only seeing, for the most part, what people want you to see, right? The positivity, the good parts of a product. Right? A lot of times it's just people trying to sell you products or ideas. It can be really kind of discouraging because you're not in that positivity, right? You're struggling. You are maybe feeling negative. You're not motivated, and around you there is kind of all these things that are very positive, or they're trying to create a certain perception around you. And I think that a lot of this too is working underneath the hood, right? There's these kind of small things that are affecting your subconscious, and kind of crafting a perception, crafting a belief about something, and you just kind of don't even realize that your kind of mind is being programmed in that way. And so when you're struggling with something like language learning, it's very easy to just kind of to make that to have that negativity be even more intense, right? Because maybe you're isolated, maybe you're the only one learning a language, and then kind of it just seems like you're alone in that negativity and that lack of progress. But I think it's important to realize that everybody is facing struggles, whether it's with language learning or something else. And it's not easy. There's a lot of people quitting learning a language. People are struggling with grammar. People are struggling with the language that you're learning. Maybe they're trying to reduce their accent. They're struggling with speaking. So you're not alone in this process. So even if you don't see it, um, it's really important to realize that you're not alone kind of in these struggles. But the good thing about it is that you can overcome the struggles, and and when you're facing kind of a lack of motivation, or it just feels like you're in a plateau, probably one of the best things that you can do, it sounds really cliche, is to be um, self-critical, to think for yourself, right? It seems like very cliche or just kind of silly, like what I'm saying, right? Is to think for yourself, but I think it's very important to take a step back and ask yourself questions, right? Okay, am I making progress? And then maybe you kind of come to the conclusion, well, actually, I am making progress because I can look at point A, point B, and point C, and clearly I'm making progress. I just don't feel that way. Well, why do I feel this way? Okay, maybe it's because I've just been very sleep deprived this week, and I'm just getting into a negative headspace because of other things in my life. Asking questions, right? It's this Socratic method idea of things. I recommended it in one of my videos of just kind of trying to apply the Socratic method to things. And there's so much you can learn from just like some of these kind of people that have lived in the past, like philosophy. I highly suggest and encourage you to read some of the Greek philosophy that's out there. It's really interesting. But obviously, you're here for language learning, and probably that stuff is not the most clickable video topics, right? As thinking for yourself, Socratic method, things like that. But the thing about it, though, is that even though it's not you know, an idea that's probably super popular, that's going to get a bunch of views, it's really important. It's something that can really help you. It's just think for yourself and ask questions, right? How am I going to overcome this plateau with grammar? What can I do? Do I actually have a problem? How do I get motivation? Will this work? How am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? Where am I going to do this? Right? Asking questions to try to arrive at truth. And, just something as simple as this can really make the big difference in terms of solving the problems that you have. Um, with dealing with these problems of motivation or feeling like you're not making progress or frustration. Of course, there's tips out there in terms of, hey, how to get more motivation or how to speak better or how to get better at listening. There's practical, concrete tips out there to get better. And to kind of solve some of the problems that you might be having. But what I think is even more powerful is, like I said, being able to do that process on your own, right? Kind of observing what the problem is and tackling it with your own solutions, right? And maybe those solutions involve going and searching out methods and strategies that other people have devised. But there is some real massive power with just the self-analysis component of things, especially as you know, you go along the process and you lack motivation. So like I said, not a super, I think, appealing and at times approachable topic, but it's something that's really, I think, very powerful. That if you do that with your language learning, you'll definitely see benefits in the end of the day. So now I want to talk about a review and just ask you, how is your language learning going? What's going right and what's going wrong? I think that having frequent reflections, frequent just kind of observations of what's going right and what's going wrong can be very helpful in your language learning process over the long term, right? Because by doing kind of regular reflections or regular reviews about your progress, you're able to identify problems. And if you notice problems, you can come up with solutions, which will then make your language learning more fun, more effective, and I think it just helps a lot in the end of the day. And it doesn't always have to be negative. Reflect about the things that you're doing right, and ask yourself, hey, what am I doing right? And that can be a big confidence booster. That maybe you have found an effective method for vocabulary acquisition or improving your speaking. And maybe by just kind of realizing that you've been doing certain things right, you can kind of keep repeating those actions for the next week, the next month, etc. But then also we want to, of course, look at ways we can improve our language learning, and just see what's going wrong and try to tackle those problems head on with some solutions. And if we can be 2% more effective or 5% more effective, it might not seem like a lot, but over the course of many weeks and many months, that progress adds up where your hour of study time is just worth a lot more than if you didn't do this reflection and of course improve your methods. So I think it's always important to try to reflect ever so often, and just ask yourself, what's going right and what's not going so great, and what are some ways that you can kind of tackle those problems head on with some solutions. So let me give you an example of something that could be a small efficiency improvement that you could have identified in a reflection. So let's say that you're doing flashcard reviews weekly, and that's how you're reviewing your vocabulary. And at times when you're doing it, you're just a little bit tired. You review your flashcards and you're just kind of silent about it. But maybe if you can kind of push yourself just a little bit, and when you review a flashcard, say the word out loud, right? So repeat it to yourself out loud. That way, you're getting some speaking practice, and you're also kind of helping to reinforce remembering that word by having that kind of kinesthetic action of saying it out loud. And then, of course, you're hearing the word being said that you've just said. So it's better than just the visual reference, but you're also saying it out loud. Maybe also, if you're just reviewing flashcards just kind of casually, before kind of checking the answer, you can just say, okay, well, what is the answer? And kind of quiz yourself and kind of get that recall in. Maybe you're just really tired after a long day and you just don't feel like saying the words out loud, or quizzing yourself. Well, maybe if you just push yourself a little bit, it'll make your vocabulary review a little bit more effective. And so if you just think about noticing that small efficiency improvement in a weekly or monthly reflection, that can kind of add up a lot in the long term. And obviously, that's just one example. There's many different kind of ways to look at this, and different examples we could use. But I think that this kind of just shows the power that reflection can have on your language learning. Identifying what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and how you can improve in your language learning overall. And that's what I had for the week. So definitely let me know what you think. How is your language learning going? What insights have you been gathering from your experiences? And leave a comment below if you're open to it. And with all that being said, I will see you all in the next video. Take care.